Good afternoon, everybody. I am so proud to be standing here today with members of the Providence City Council, leadership from Brown University, Rhode Island School of Design, Providence College in Johnson, Wales, leaders from the building trades, Providence business owners, leaders in our hospitality community, and so many others to formally announce that we have signed a tentative agreement for payments in lieu of taxes that will set Providence on a strong financial future path for the years to come. This has been months of collaboration and hard work across our organizations. I want to take a moment and give special recognition to the city's negotiating team. Providence was represented by Chief Financial Officer Larry Mancini, City Solicitor Jeff Dana, and I want to give a particular moment to thank our Chief Operating Officer, Courtney Hawkins, for her exceptional work in leading these conversations and bringing us to this point today. Thank you. We'll be hearing from President Chris Paxson on behalf of the colleges in a few minutes, but I also want to recognize and thank Dan Egan, the Association of Colleges and Universities, who was also instrumental in representing his members to get us to this point today. What we have proposed is an agreement that more than doubles the voluntary contributions that were made in the past. We've come to an agreement that sets our city now as a national example for how to better define the relationship between institutions of higher education who happen to be property tax exempt, but are so vital to the success of our city. This new pilot agreement is composed of two parts. The first is an MOU between the city and the 4 private colleges. The second is an additional MOA between just Brown and the city. Through the MOU, again with the 4 colleges, Brown, RISD, Johnson & Wales, and Providence College, Providence will see its voluntary payments from these institutions increase by $92 million over the life of the agreement to a total of $223 million. Additionally, the MOU formally recognizes the many important contributions that these institutions make to our city. From investing in our schools to improving our parks and public spaces to the many, many other ways in which these institutions contribute to making Providence Providence. And once this new agreement is passed by the City Council, the city will now publicly report these community contributions every year so that city residents, taxpayers, visitors, and members of the university communities know and can see the many ways in which these institutions contribute to the vitality of our city. Additionally, these voluntary payments made by the 4 universities will be augmented by supplemental payments in an MOA between Brown University and the city. This 10-year agreement amounts to $46 million in additional payments. We recognize but are grateful for the fact that Brown has the ability to contribute more and that they are doing so. We also recognize that Brown University, all 4 universities, but Brown in particular, is a true economic engine for our city. And as we look at growth and development, job creation, intellectual capital, and so many other things that are happening in our capital city, it's coming out of Brown University. So through this MOA, the city will support some of Brown's key priorities, where it is a win-win for the city and the institution. We will support the growth of their life sciences facility and help them become more of a leader than they already are in this space. I want to thank President Paxson, Rhode Island School of Design President Williams, Providence College President Sicard, Johnson & Wales Chancellor Mimrooney for their dedication to coming to these mutually beneficial agreements. From the beginning, we negotiated around shared priorities of fairness, equity, and ensuring that Providence has the financial security to sustainably grow, and to make sure, as you've heard from me many times before, that everybody in Providence receives excellent city services. That includes the students, faculty, and staff of these institutions, just as much as it means our taxpayers and our visitors. I'm thrilled that we've reached this agreement that meets these goals, and again, am particularly proud that what we have to present to the City Council is now a national model, and we think one of the best agreements in the country. This is good news for our residents who want to see more value in their tax payments, for the many businesses that want to continue to grow, and for our workforce that is employed, in many cases, by these institutions. I look forward to working closely with the City Council in the weeks to come as they go through their process to properly vet this proposal and hopefully ratify it in the weeks to come. And on that note, it's my pleasure to introduce the woman who will have that next step, my partner on the City Council, President Rachel Miller.
Thank you, Mayor Smiley, and thank you so much to everyone who's here today, folks in the audience and behind me. I want to take a moment and congratulate Mayor Smiley, Chiefs Hawkins and Mancini, and everyone on the team for working to get us to this point. And I, of course, share my thanks with the leadership and representatives from each university, RISD, Johnson & Wales, Providence College, and Brown University for engaging in earnest and open dialogue about an agreement that will be mutually beneficial. And I'm proud to share my support for this $223 million deal. I want to share a few details about why and a little bit about what will happen next. So the success of Providence and that of all of our nonprofit institutions in Providence are intimately connected, right? We know this. We celebrate the influx of business and research dollars and outstanding faculty and staff that come to live and work in Providence because of our world-class institutions. Each fall, we welcome thousands of young people who make Providence their home away from home. We all know also that there are costs associated with institutions calling Providence home, right? Wear and tear, infrastructure, public safety costs. As the city projects its growth with rising costs and inflationary challenges, there is a financial cost associated with being home to tax-exempt institutions. The City Council and Mayor Smiley are working together to provide exceptional quality of life and public safety services for everyone who lives and works in our great city. One thing that unites the leadership of this council and mayor in particular is we are grounded in, we're grounded in the here and now and getting immediate results, and we are also often thinking about and talking about the future, right? Not just the future of our terms in office, but how we are setting Providence up for future residents and city leaders to be able to build on the growth and expansion that we see today. This agreement does just that. It sets a new era of contributions to the city, of collaboration between the city and university nonprofit entities, both on what we are getting right and what needs improvement as we set up this ongoing working group that will exist between the city and universities on quality of life issues. But also it resets this expectation for what's possible when we work together collaboratively. All told, with projections from the recently passed law at the General Assembly on taxing commercial properties and current university agreements, we can expect an investment of $442 million in the city of Providence over the next 20 years. There is a significant increase, as we just heard from Mayor Smiley, in voluntary payments and community benefits. $223 million over 20 years, 138% of previous pilot university agreements. There is a dollar-for-dollar match in the $177 million pilot payments from the joint agreements for community benefits. And then I'd especially like to point out a change in the agreement that was made late last week. So I had an opportunity to meet with representatives from each institution and several counselors to share a few points of particular concern. One of those was that the voluntary payments increase each year to align with rising costs to the city and our residents. After our conversation, the universities came back to the table with the proposal you see today. So that includes these 5-year escalator costs. So in the first 5 years, voluntary payments will increase by 2% each year. In the second 5 years, they'll increase by 2.5%. In the third 5 years, they'll increase by 2.7%. And then in the last 3 years, so year 15 through 20 of this agreement, they'll increase each year by 3%. I do genuinely want to thank the mayor, the negotiating team, and the universities for including the council even before we get to kind of our public process in these negotiations. We also discussed at that meeting the opportunity that community benefits have real citywide impact, that we take a collaborative approach to the investments we're making, that we ensure that counselors and the administration, city residents and leaders can share which community benefits can make the biggest impact and do the most good. And we'll get to hear about some of that in a minute. Again, I just want to thank everyone who got us to this point. So what happens next? On Thursday, the City Council, at the City Council meeting, will receive the MOU and the MOA, these two separate agreements, and refer them to the Committee on Finance. In Finance, councilors will have an opportunity to vet the agreement, hear back from, feedback from residents, and ultimately vote on them in the form of 2 resolutions, send them back to the full council, which I expect to happen at some point in October. So I want to thank everyone who's here joining, especially I want to thank some members of the City Council who are standing behind me. We've got Pro Tem Pichardo who's here, Councilwoman Althea Graves, and it is now my honor to introduce my partner and counselor in Ward 10, Pedro Espinal, who will speak a little bit more specifically about community impact. So thank you all.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank you so much for your effort and participation in this negotiations. Mayor Smiley, you've done a great job. Thank you so much for coming, bringing this together and producing this wonderful news today that it is for all of us. To the representatives of the different colleges and universities that are here today, of course, this would have never been done without you. Thank you for being at the table and thinking about our residents, our city, our taxpayers. I think you guys all deserve a big round of applause because you did a great job and really brought this together. You know, at the beginning of new administration, we knew that we were going to have to come together at some point to produce great results for the residents of Providence. So this plan that we have here today, this agreement, this deal that we have put together, it is exactly that. It more than doubles what we were getting before. It brings hundreds of millions of dollars in community benefits. That community benefits is very unique and special to me, as I represent a community in Rhode that has a university, Johnson & Wales, and also I think it's the only ward, the only community in our city that you can actually go from pre-K all the way to the 12th grade. We have an elementary school, Rhode Middle School, and we also have a couple of high schools. And we also have Johnson & Wales. So you can actually move to my district, have a family, put them through daycare, pre-K, and at the same time, watch them grow and develop and get a full education. That is so special about my district. And which is why this community benefit and community contribution is so important. I mean, when we talk about investing in nonprofit, we talk about parks, open space, and also education K through 12, and everything that is detailed in this plan. You can see where our community is actually going to benefit. So that's why I'm so supportive of this measure, and I'm here to tell you that I'm going to work 300% with my council president and my colleagues to make sure that this makes it through the council. I thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. Pleasure to introduce you Brown University, Christina Paxson.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and I want to begin with thanks, as others have, to Mayor Smiley and his team, to City Council President Rachel Miller, and the other city councilors who are here today, and especially to my fellow college and university presidents and their negotiating teams who worked very hard in collaboration with the mayor's office to get us to this point. So I know I speak on behalf of all 4 institutions when I say that we're proud that we've reached this agreement after a series of very constructive and positive negotiations with the city. And it's been said before, but the truth is that the fortunes of our institutions and the fortune of Providence, they're deeply intertwined. And so we all have a stake in doing this well and getting it right. With nearly $223 million in new direct voluntary payments to Providence over the next 20 years, $175 million of which is from Brown, we're demonstrating our deep commitment to this city. And we're asking, as you've heard, the City Council to consider two separate agreements. One is the MOU between the city and the four institutions represented here. This will provide a steady, stable, and growing source of support for the city over time. The other is a 10-year memorandum of agreement between the city and Brown alone. And I have to say, there are many models out there across the nation for agreements between cities and universities. This one is distinctive. It really is different in that it aligns our interests, the interests of Brown and the city, by creating clear incentives for Brown to contribute to economic development and grow the tax base in Providence. So to give you a few examples, the partnership with CV Properties and Brown on parcels 1415 of the 195 land joined with some Brown-owned properties. This is just one example of the kind of tax-generating residential and commercial development that we want to see happen. And it's exactly what the MOA between Brown and the city promotes. Brown's role as an anchor tenant in a number of projects, Rhode Island Department of Health building, but also commercial lab buildings, which are tax-paying. Those are other examples. And what we found is that when we can come along and guarantee tenancy, occupancy in a new building, that's often very attractive to developers and giving them the confidence that they can come into the city and make concrete investments that benefit everybody. So I know that I speak for my fellow presidents when I say that these proposed agreements, both of them, they reflect our combined and deep commitment to the well-being and Providence, the vibrancy of Providence and the people who live here. And I know I also speak for them when I say that we look forward to working together in the years to come to serve the people of this community. So thanks, everybody. And now, I want to turn it to Local 1033 Business Manager Ron Koya. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me start off by saying I'm thrilled to be here today representing the hard-working members of Local Union 1033 throughout the city of Providence. This historic agreement more than doubles the financial contributions the city will be receiving from the city's private colleges and universities. The money goes directly towards maintaining and improving the multitude of city services that Providence residents and local businesses depend upon every day, and that we as members of Local 1033 are very proud to provide. This is not only good news for all that live and work and visit our great city, but it is tremendous for the men and women who are the backbone of these critical services that I am proud to represent. With this new agreement, we are ensuring that we will be able to provide higher raises, better working conditions to our friends and neighbors who work every day, day in and day out, to ensure the city meets the needs of the community. I am strongly supportive of this proposal, and I want to thank the mayor and the leaders of all these institutions for coming together to build a better deal for Providence and the workforce that supports the city. Thank you very much. At this moment, I'm proud to introduce Mark Federico from Mary Music Group.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Mayor Smiley, I deeply appreciate the opportunity to join you today to celebrate this good news. To the members of the City Council and leaders of our 4 colleges and universities, thank you for the chance to share my perspective as the owner of a small business, family-run business in Providence. My name is Mark Federico, and I operate Narragansett Creamery, which I founded in 2007 with my family and Luella Hill, a Brown University graduate. We produce award-winning cheeses and other dairy products right here from our facility near Wells Avenue in Alnico. Today, we sell our foods not only in Rhode Island stores, from Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New York. That's not always been the case. We started small and worked hard to grow our business and make sure the Rhode Islanders we employ share in our success. So how did we get there? In no small part with the support of the colleges and universities. As just one example, Brown University purchases about 75,000 pounds of shredded mozzarella each year. Even with the healthy options they have, pizza remains a dining hall staple. While we supplied small quantities of artisan cheeses to Brown initially, we could not meet the full demand because we just didn't have the equipment. Rather than drop the request and find a large, national, out-of-state manufacturer, Brown's dining team insisted on staying local. They found a grant opportunity that helped us land a $250,000 New England Food Vision prize to support our growth. We purchased an industrial cheese shredder, and today we deliver tens of thousands of pounds of pizza cheese to Brown, RISD, and other universities, as well as K through 12 schools. We even teach cheese-making classes at Johnson & Wales as they train future generations of culinary professionals. As a small company, when you have partners like Brown, RISD, Johnson & Wales, and Providence College, you can count on the steady stream of business they provide. That means you can purchase the right equipment, hire the right people. It means we can provide jobs, and we have a steady cash flow. Quite simply, our relationship with local colleges and universities have given us the confidence to grow our business. I've seen the important role the schools have played in making the city of Providence a major food and cultural destination. I know the voluntary payments in the agreement announced today are important in supporting the city financially, but just as important is the role these universities play as an economic engine for the city, its residents and businesses like Narragansett Creamery. They inject hundreds of millions of dollars into the local economy each year through their purchasing power, and their students and visitors spend tens of millions locally. I'm glad to be among the businesses with a productive relationship with our schools. I thank all of you for your work in making Providence a vibrant place to live and work, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
That concludes the formal speaking program. We'll take questions.
Mayor, what today, out of all the days you've announced this, it sounds like you might have been down to the wire with obviously the day of the major election and kind of a little foreshadow.
So we worked hard with a sort of a self-imposed deadline of being ready to introduce the agreements to the City Council when they return from their August recess. Their first meeting is this week after their recess, and we needed to get it on the docket. I know it's a crowded day today with other obligations, but tomorrow's the first day of school, and the council meeting's on Thursday, so here we are. But we're really excited with the agreement from the administration's perspective, and grateful to have the council people who are here today's support, and look forward to their process in the weeks to come.
Mayor, what was the tone of the negotiations? And was there any particular sticking points or challenges that the administration found?
So I want to start by saying, and I'm grateful, I mentioned Dan Egan earlier, but also the presidents. These conversations actually started informally in December before I was even sworn in. And so to the question around tone, there was never a question amongst these four institutions if they would be renewing their agreements. There was always a question of how and in what way and what it would look like. And that is not something that I take for granted, and certainly that other cities around the country that have this same relationship with large nonprofit institutions. So the tone always started from a respectful place, and that they understood that they needed to renew these agreements and wanted to find something that as the president points out, was different, that actually starts to align our interests to move forward. And so this has been 6 months of hard work, and certainly there were moments where it was a bit of a slog, but everyone was always at the table because they felt deeply that a successful Providence, again, as President Paxton said, is important to the city itself, but important to the institutions as well.
Mayor, 3 of your 4 charts here have a comparison to Yale,
Yes.
presumably with the city of New Haven. What's the point here?
Prior to the agreements that we're announcing today, I think there's no comprehensive survey nationwide, but it was certainly in our research, the agreement between Yale and New Haven was the most generous agreement in the country that we knew of between the institutions and a host community. And so when I tasked our negotiating team with reaching this agreement, it's difficult in a situation where the institutions are in fact tax exempt. And we don't dispute that. That's why these are voluntary payments. But in order to determine kind of what's fair, what we set out to do was to reach an agreement that was a significant increase over the past, and that was the best in the country. And so what we believe today is we have an agreement, we know by the math, that we have an agreement that's more than double the previous payments, and we believe is now the most generous agreement in the country between colleges and institutions from the city's perspective.
And the part about Brown's tax liability in terms of commercial use properties, how satisfactory is that agreement to you?
So we saw legislative changes this year for a practice that the institutions, the colleges had been voluntarily adhering to, whereby when the large nonprofit institutions rent space for unaffiliated commercial purposes, these institutions have been voluntarily paying taxes on those tenancies or portions of the buildings. And we're very grateful for that. But it was just that, it was voluntary. They actually supported us in our legislative efforts to make that a statutory change statewide, and then would then apply to the other large nonprofit institutions in the city to include the hospitals. And that's an important piece of the puzzle, because as we haven't talked about much today, but I've talked about many, many times in the past, these institutions, from purely a tax perspective, are very important to the state of Rhode Island. However, the jobs that they create, the sales tax revenue that they generate, even the hotel tax revenue that they generate on weekends like this, most of that money goes to the state and not to the city. And so it's important that the obligation is not just on the institutions, but in the case of this legislation, their tenants, and other proposals that we had last year.
President Paxton, would you speak to that?
One thing I stressed is I do think this agreement is distinctive, and it follows our long commitment to doing the right thing by the city. I do think the innovation here is remarkable, and that is having something that explicitly aligns our interests going forward. As the mayor said, real estate tax really drives the finances of this city, and so we have to make sure that what we do increases that base.
Council President Miller?
There's going to potentially be a land conveyance along with this agreement, 5 blocks of the city being transferred to Brown, essentially. Can you make any sort of commitment saying that the public will still be allowed access to this land? I mean, it's a sizable chunk of it down in Providence.
I think that's an important question. We are committed to working with the city, with the community, as we develop plans to use that land. We don't have any immediate plans at all. And, especially in the jewelry district, we approach this very collaboratively with the local organizations, and we intend to continue.
As a follow-up, there are going to be some public projects that universities will commit alongside these agreements. Do you have any ideas for any projects that Brown is interested in contributing?
I can't speak to anything that hasn't been announced already.
I'm not sure if you answered Olivia's first question,
Yeah.
which is, are you committed to keeping those 5 blocks, if you get them, open to the public by foot, by car?
We don't have specific plans at this point. What I can commit to is whatever we do will be done in collaboration with partners.
Council President, I would imagine that this agreement significantly stabilizes, if you will, the cash flow and the income flow to the city. With this finally behind us, and this is a major moment in Providence history, is the city able to reevaluate property taxes in terms of both commercial and residential now moving forward?
That's a great question. So this Thursday, among a lot of important things on the agenda, including the MOU and the MOA, I'll be announcing a tax commission that's a collaboration with the administration and Mayor Smiley's team that appoints a commission through the end of the year to look just at, and I'm happy to talk more about that on Thursday. But I think there's a real opportunity to assess how we build some equity into how taxes are apportioned.
Mayor, you mentioned the new tax on commercial use spaces. Your administration started a fiscal study of how much you get.
We haven't. By agreement, throughout the course of the legislative session, we agreed to push the implementation back a year, which will give us a chance to start to assess those properties. One of the dilemmas, as you know, as we've talked about, it was hard to get an estimate because we've never assessed those properties before. Similarly, in most cases, the institutions will need to amend or want to clarify with their tenants that the taxes will be their obligation. And so the implementation of that is not for another year, and the tax assessor is starting to work on that now.
President Paxton, you've spoken a lot about aligning interests, but was there a specific area where you felt you needed the city to come into agreement in order for this pilot program to actually work? Was there one thing in particular that was really important you get out of this?
No, I can't point to one single thing. And I've said really since the beginning of starting these negotiations, was to come up with an agreement, which I think the mayor has been, and his team have been great at and buy into, which does align our interests and make sure that we can move forward in a collaborative way. But not one specific thing.
So when you say align your interests, what's the kind of key takeaway that's now aligned that wasn't before all this?
I think if you read the MOA, and don't ask me to go through all the details right here, but if you read it, what you'll see is that if Brown does things that generate new tax revenue for the city, part of that goes to reducing the payment that we make every year. So we have an incentive to invest in ways that are win-wins for the university and the city as well.
Favorite pizza toppings?
Arrogance and creamery mozzarella, of course.
Mayor, can you speak more to the quality of life discussions that you're going to be having with universities on a monthly basis?
Yeah, we have a joint commitment to a quality of life working group to meet quarterly. We understand that the institutions add vibrancy to the neighborhoods, but sometimes that vibrancy comes with some challenges for longtime residents. And so, and it's the institution's interest also to make sure that students living off campus are doing so respectfully to the neighborhoods. And so we're going to work together on a regular basis in a more formalized structure. We've always had clear and open lines of communication and haven't doubted the institution's desire to make sure that the neighborhoods within which they reside are embracing of their presence, but this is now going to be a more formal structure to make sure that the kind of host neighborhoods, and Providence is a city of neighborhoods, and so the Elmhurst, Mount Pleasant neighborhood in PC, and the east side of Brown, the Drury District of Brown, there's different neighborhood leaders and different nuances in those communities that we're now going to work in a more formalized setting to make sure that those institutions and the neighbors can work and thrive together.
And who will be coming to those tables at those discussions?
There'll be leadership from city operational departments and from the institutions themselves to try to resolve issues and to, facilitate the ongoing relationship between the two.
Mayor, can you talk about what the most immediate impacts will be should this agreement get passed for this agreement?
Sure. Perhaps most immediately, when the city passed its budget this year, the city council, to ensure that we in fact had a balanced budget, because my administration had put a placeholder in for payments to be received from the institutions because we knew we were underway but not yet complete. And so the city council said that new hires could not be hired. There was a hiring freeze essentially until the pilot agreements were ratified. And so when the agreement is ratified, that hiring freeze will be lifted. And many of the things that were investments in my budget this year that I'm very excited about, I know the city council is as well, things like additional graffiti, personnel to receive graffiti, remove graffiti, new sidewalk repairs, and others will be unfrozen upon ratification. And so that's, I think, what we're most excited about, because we've got a backlog of city service issues that we're excited to get to work on.
Mayor, can you speak to the pilot negotiations with Lifespan? Has that institution been less willing than the colleges to pay pilot payments?
Yeah. Lifespan currently is the only large nonprofit institution in the city of Providence with no pilot agreement. I'll say it again. Lifespan is now the only institution in Providence with no agreement, and that's a problem. Care New England has a 3-year agreement, which we are halfway through. We're in year 2 of, and we now have this tentative agreement about which I'm very excited and particularly proud. We are anxious to start negotiating with Lifespan. My most recent conversation with the CEO of Lifespan was that they would be in touch to name a negotiating team after Labor Day. It's only 2 days after Labor Day, or 1 day after Labor Day, so we're not going to start ringing the bell yet. But it is a problem that they have no existing agreement with us, and it is something that I think I can speak on behalf of the council president and I feel very strongly that those negotiations need to start. They need to start in earnest, and we need to have an agreement that is commensurate with the success of the agreement that we're announcing today.
Mayor, can you speak to the University of Rhode Island, the other prominent educational institution that's not here today? What type of relationship does the city have with that, and how would you like to bring that in line with the contributions these schools are willing to make?
So today is very much about the 4 private colleges in Providence, and we're grateful for their voluntary contributions that are enshrined in these 2 agreements today. The University of Rhode Island, the Community College of Rhode Island College, all make up important parts of Providence. URI's footprint here is obviously much smaller than it is in South County, but they are part of why Providence is Providence, and a place with a reputation for higher education and a multitude of students that adds to the vitality of our city. I've had great conversations with the president of URI about different ways for them to contribute, and it's important to note for both the public colleges and for the other nonprofit institutions, the city of Providence and other cities in Rhode Island do receive state pilot funds. So the state reimburses cities and towns for 27% of the tax revenue lost to nonprofit institutions, including government itself, which is a way in which URI's modest footprint in Providence is reimbursed to us through the state pilot program, which is something we continue to advocate for at the State House every year in their budget appropriation.
Mayor, when you talk about the quality of life meetings, will there be any actions taken from those meetings? For instance, the council had considered whether to limit student renters. Are you going to do anything to try to curb the impact of student living on Providence locals?
Yeah, so the primary focus of the Quality of Life Working Group will be to address the impact of students in the neighborhood. So whether it's parties or trash or bicycle and scooter parking, and it's not just one way, by the way. This isn't just complaints from the neighborhood about students. This is a place that the institutions can bring issues to us, where perhaps the city has not done its part to repair infrastructure or otherwise make the neighborhoods that they reside in also livable for their students, employees, and faculty. I would fully expect that policy proposals like the student housing ordinance and other things that might bubble up in that working group will find its way to the city council, which is where it should be vetted, and that's the appropriate process for that. But I think certainly my vision for the Quality of Life working groups is that it be more operational, a little bit more at the street level functional of solving problems before they become big problems, and to kind of keep peace in the neighborhoods with the residents who, like myself, live very close to a college.
Would you be including the companies that buy property and turn them into student housing and kick out people, like families and such? Would that be also a quality of life issue you might want to take up? I'm talking about Strive and other.
Sure. The working group itself, I don't expect to have private landlords, at least not pre-purchase. But the growth of student housing is a complicated issue that we deal with on a regular basis, and it's something that we will continue to deal with in the years to come. That's why I'm delighted that Brown has just opened 2 new dorms on the east side, so that there's reduced pressure on off-campus housing and increased availability of on-campus housing, which, when appropriate, is a better place for students to be than to continue to add to that additional strain on long-term residents and neighborhoods, from my perspective.
I can take a few more.
Are you happy with this agreement? I mean, during the campaign, you made a lot of promises. Does this line up with those promises, you think?
I do. I think like I said, and I said to Steve earlier, because these institutions are tax exempt, and that is without question, trying to define what's fair is difficult. And so what we did is we looked at examples around the country, we looked at our history, and I'm very happy. I think it's an important moment to note, and maybe this is a good way to close. This is the replacement of an original agreement that Mayor Cicilline negotiated 20 years ago, and then the expiration of a supplemental agreement that happened with Mayor Taveras 10 years ago. And to think about the evolution of those agreements, and I give great credit to Mayor Cicilline at the time, who got the first payment ever. Previously, there was no payment at all, and that was a great accomplishment. When Mayor Taveras was negotiating with universities, the city was in the midst of a financial crisis on the heels of the Great Recession, and it was a moment of crisis in the city, and the institution stepped up. This is now the evolution of those agreements. This is a new replacement to both of those agreements to put us on a stable path forward for 10 years with the MOA and 20 years with the underlying MOU. It is what we again believe to be the most generous agreement in the country between colleges and their host community, and more than double from what we received in the past. From my perspective, by all standards, that is a great success and exceeds my expectations, and a credit to the city's negotiating team and to the partnership and the collaboration and the spirit of collaboration that we received from the colleges from day one to reach this moment. Thank you all.